Okay, let's talk about UV and light fastness. What does it mean in the arts and crafts world? So with a resin background, I will refer a little bit to resin, but this is across the board with all of our arts and crafts. When you're buying pigments, pastes and things for your mixed media projects, what you're going to want to know is, are they light fast? What does that even mean? So years ago, there still is, but this was a textile industry had a blue wool scale where it was scored. A pigment was scored between 1 and 8, 8 being excellent light fastness, 1 being absolutely rubbish, like some brands of alcohol inks that we know about in the craft world. So it was typically adopted in the textile world, but has been since across the board been used in watercolours, mixed medias, polymer, all of the colours. It's a great scale for scoring UV light fastness. But it is important to say that in the watercolour world, for example, light fastness, UV tolerant, is not the same as permanence. If you come in with another substrate or another chemical or another property on top of a pigment, it could still alter. That doesn't mean that it isn't UV tolerant, but we won't go into that today. So UV, which is our ultraviolet radiation from the sunshine, the outdoors, is what penetrates on colour and causes it to change colour. Some of you will know of certain alcohol inks, paints from the high street, certain pigments that don't stand the test of time very well, and they do fade very quickly. How this measurement is taken is over a 3 to 4 month period. You'll have the pigment in intense UV light and the same pigment in the dark, and then once they have been in that process for however many, 3 to 4 months, I think it might be 12 weeks, 3 months, what they do is they compare the difference between the two pigments, and that's how it gets its scoring on the light fast on the UV scale, blue wool scale. So you can see that, say for example, you're making some art to go outside in your garden, you are not going to consider any pigment that scores less than 8 on the blue wool scale, because it will definitely change colour under the elements. Things that are inside, you could go 8, 7 or 6 and probably get away with it, providing it's not in direct sunshine. Anything less than that, you're going to start to say to your customers, this mustn't be stored anywhere near direct sunshine, it must be in a darkened room, out of the way of UV light. Anything 0, 1, 2 is questionable. I don't know why you would be picking pigments and colours like that. So if a pigment scores 8 on the blue wool scale, you're going to have a good 100 years of life out of that piece. Perfect for your resin artworks, your watercolours, your mixed medias, absolutely phenomenal. They're going to stand the test of time, and that is classed as a lifetime, 100 years. If you are using pigments that are from the high street, a couple of quid for a whole palette of paints, you're going to be looking at 0 to 1 on the light fast scale, and you're going to be looking at about 1 to 5 years of life with those pigments. So you're not really making a piece that's going to last and stand the test of time. So the blue wool scale originally came from the textile industry, but as artists we use it a lot. My pigments for resin, acrylic paints, mixed media, all of the pigments that are on my shop floor all score 8. They are not going to change in intense UV light. You could put them under your UV nail lamps and they will not change colour. Glitters, sparkles, textures on the other hand, cut flowers, pressed flowers, they are not UV stable. They will have a lower score on the blue wool scale. So it's a really interesting thing to read up on. So it does bear thinking about. Maybe you're toying between the idea of a pigment that's £1 or £2 and a pigment that's 3 and 4. What you're going to want to ask your questions are, is it good for my small business? Are my customers going to come back to me in a year's time and say, oi, my piece has changed colour, what has happened? For the sake of £1 or £2, you know, it's definitely worth thinking about whether your pigments are UV stable, UV tolerant.